Well, my name is Gavin Eccles. I'm the founder of GE Consulting. I'm a boutique management consultant focusing on airlines and destination development. I've been in Portugal more than 20 years. I just love being here. I have a lovely house in the Alentejo, and there's nothing better than just enjoying a nice glass of wine after a long day on the road. Married with two lovely daughters, and it's great to be the latest guest on Portugal, A Simple Life podcast. Thank you.
Welcome back, or welcome to another episode of Portugal, The Simple Life. And I'm really excited and delighted to be joined here by Gavin Eccles. Gavin, good morning. Bon dia. Thank you for being on the podcast.
No, thank you. How are you today?
Very, very well. Thank you. Very well. We were just talking about our plans, our summer plans, very different plans. I'm going one direction, you're going in another direction, completely different weather.
I will holiday in Portugal when I always have holidays in Portugal. It feels, when we have such lovely summer, why leave? But that's for another
It's true. It's true. Yeah. People always say to me, where do you holiday? I said, it's difficult when you live in Portugal, to holiday elsewhere. But yes. Gavin, why don't you start off telling us a bit about you?
Okay. Well, I'm Gavin, 54. We'll be 54 in August. Married with a Portuguese lady. I have two girls. We live near Costa Caparica, on the south side of Lisbon, and then we have a very nice quintinha, as we would say in Portuguese, in the Alentejo, which is our escapism for the weekend. So that's kind of
beautiful.
Been in Portugal around more than 20 years. I'm sure we'll talk about that. I'm a management consultant and a professor, so I'm a specialist in the aviation and tourism world. Probably that's why I ended up in Portugal. And then I teach in management classes, business management, both in the aviation sector where most of my consultancy is, and in general management. So yeah, that's. So
life is busy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I've taken the opportunity to be what we call self-employed. So I work for myself, which helps because you can manage a little bit differently. I've done the corporate world for a long, long time, and now I have the life where yes, you're on your own. But I think with my age and profile, it allows me to work with those that see the benefits that I can bring them.
Wonderful. How did your journey? I mean, so you've been in Portugal 20 years. I think out of all of our international guests that we've had on the podcast, you're probably the one that's lived here the longest. Okay. So I've been here 16 years. I thought I'd been here for a long time. You've been here longer. We came before it was popular, before it was in vogue.
Oh, my word. It was completely different. I mean, what brought me, I work because I was in the aviation sector. I have two hobbies. One is travel and one is golf. So when you work for an airline, it really helped. And obviously, Portugal, I'm going back now 25 years when I first started to come to Portugal to play golf. Most would go to the Algarve, as you know, that's kind of the mecca of golf with over 40 courses. But I found the Lisbon coast, particularly where I am now, South Lisbon, around Font de Telha. We have a fantastic course called Oeira. And I remember, 25 years ago, Portuguese didn't really play golf. It was the British mentality was that taxi drivers and football players played golf. And in Portugal, it was kind of the jet set. So I remember racking up at these courses in south of Lisbon. They were really the pioneers of kind of development of golf. And I just fell in love with playing golf in Portugal. And so that's kind of where it all started. The ability to just jump on a plane. And even there's a course north of Lisbon, Praia del Rei. I mean, I remember playing there when it didn't even have a clubhouse. It was that long ago.
Wow.
So yes.
That's a great course.
I mean, it was. Yeah. It was at one point one of Europe's best.
I think it was voted, 2007 best golf course in Europe. That's I'm not a good golfer, so but
Okay.
if I do play, I play there. It's not far from where I live. It's about 15 minutes from where I
Oh,
live,
it's
and it's
easy.
amazing.
I remember
Yeah.
I picked up, I mean, this is how long, tourism, I went on to work for Visit Portugal. We'll talk about that. But Visit Portugal used to have in downtown London, they had a tourist office. We didn't have the internet in those days. And I remember
Yeah.
I just put my head in the door and picked up this brochure about this golf course called Praia del Rey. Knew nothing about it, and phoned the number, and it was a Sheffield. It was a Sheffield number, and I'll take it to my
Amazing.
grave because it was the owner, the actually owner of the property, answered the phone, and I said, "Oh, look, I've got this pamphlet about a course in Portugal. I know nothing about it,"
Yeah.
and it just showed that the owner was so involved in the project that yeah. Then I went many times, and so yeah, that really golf was what really brought me into the, and then just from then onwards, I realized that it was great opportunities, and I actually told my wife, we were living in the UK. Let's, she said, "Oh, I don't want to go back home." I'd left, I'd studied, did masters, a degree, masters in the UK. Like a lot of Portuguese that went out, I said, let's go the other way. I want to go back. I want to go to your country, and we never looked back.
Amazing.
20 odd years ago,
Amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Amazing. Well, I mean, golf brought you here. What's kept you here for 20
Well,
years?
I suppose I was quite lucky because, as you said, when we arrived, Portugal was at the kind of development stage, so the European Union and the funds that were made available, and I managed to catch up with a couple of guys that I've kept in touch with for years and years. There were a boutique consultancy that focused on real estate and golf, and because of my knowledge of aviation, we did a lot of feasibility studies. If we're going to open X golf courses, how many new planes do we need? How many new
Mm.
beds would that need? So I kind of jumped into supporting a lot of tourism development 17, 18 years ago when the Algarve was really starting to develop. Of course, you had Quinta do Lago, Valdelobos, they were well known, but the
Yeah.
rest was not as it was. And as you know, there was a perception that the Algarve was not for the Portuguese; it was just for the Brits. It was kind of seen as the locals
Yeah.
didn't go there, and so I did a huge amount of work in kind of supporting aviation development. And then I realized that this could be mirrored in other markets. So I was instrumental in opening up the low cost route to Madeira. I mean, I'd never been to Madeira, and I flew in and I spent all day in an office with the airport director overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. And again, I'll take it to my grave. I said, I can't believe it must be one of the nicest views I've ever seen. And then I worked with Madeira for many years to kind of help
Mm.
the strategy of opening the vision of what we call public service, so reducing some of the incentives that the locals get to encourage the low cost airlines to come in, and then obviously EasyJet was part of that, and then yeah, it just kept going, and then luckily I will. Fortunately, but with my knowledge, I became an advisor to Visit Portugal, where I helped show the alternatives of how to manage a destination. So rather than focusing, we just had a major campaign with a famous artist, a photographer called Nick Knight, and a lot of images being used of Ronaldo and other famous Portuguese in the international market. Visit Portugal. Mourinho says visit because of X, etc. And I said, the internet was kind of just starting.
Yeah.
I said, you really need to. We're fighting hard against Andalusia, sort of Costa del Sol, and then you throw in Turkey. You can't really just use imagery. I think you've got to change the mindset a little bit. And at the end of Europe, you get a lot of Spanish driving, but it's a long way for Brits and Germans to drive, remember? And we need connections. And I kind of helped them develop a strategic vision to really put connectivity as a key driver of tourism of Portugal's strategy, where, a big percentage of the monies that we had for promotion, rather than say visit Portugal using imagery, visit Portugal together with an airline, click here, book your ticket. And, I probably helped somewhere about 200 flight operations into Portugal across
Well,
Lisbon, Faro. Madeira, the Azores. And then I went to work for SATA. I did 3 years on the board of Azores Airlines in Ponta Delgada. So I kind of
Did you stay in Ponta
I
Delgado?
commuted. I commuted. I
Okay.
lived in a hotel kind of Monday through Thursday. We had a lot of in those days. We had a lot of good business to. There's a big diaspora community in South Massachusetts, so south of
Yeah.
Boston, and plus
Yeah.
also Toronto. So
Toronto,
I
exactly.
was on, I was probably in the US and Canada every other week, and in the interim, I'll be commuting backwards and forwards between Lisbon and Ponta Delgada. So yeah, it was nearly 3 years. It was tough. It was not. The airline was struggling. The
Yeah.
airline was struggling. It wasn't easy times, but it helped to kind of instill the discipline that, and it got me kind of working again in how to say in a having to work with others. I've done a lot of consultancy work where you're with a small group of people that you become very engrossed with, but then kind of had to go into managing about 300 people in my functional area. So I had to be a manager again. Um, but there we go. Yeah.
Amazing. Do you remember the first, because I remember flying into Madeira. Wow, it must have been the first time I went to Madeira, I was 21 years old. So it was 2001. It was, back then, it was a scary airport to land at.
For sure. No, the runway extension had come after
Helped.
so I went there after the
Yeah.
runway had been extended, and that was
Okay.
one of the rationale is that there was, the World Bank had supported a lot of that development, and the vision was you got to get busy. We've invested a lot of money in this runway. You can multiply your inflows, and they've done it. I mean, Madeira in 2024 was one of the highest growing airports in Europe.
Wow.
It's a
Okay.
great destination.
Yeah.
They're probably they've lived with tourism for a longer, much longer. Not against the Algarvians, but Algarve was really the 70s. Let's say 70s and 80s where it kind of really took off. Madeira was the 40s and the 50s. You look at King's
Mm.
Palace and the strategies behind
Yeah.
those kind of trophy hotels.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill
Pastana.
Dome.
Pastana has done amazing work on the island.
For sure. And so I think the mindset of the Madeirians, the hospitalidad of the Portuguese is even greater there than it is in the mainland. I think
Mm.
they really have a passion for tourism. Even the taxi drivers, okay, now we have Uber, but the taxi drivers, all taxis are yellow and they're bright yellow. They're cleaning them all day. There's
Yeah.
pride in what they offer.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I went. So my first time, I just spent all time in an office of an airport. But then I went back, and some of the engineering and the projects that Jardine was able to develop over those years it's like Swiss cheese. Some of the landscape with tunnels and and
It's
there was
insane. Yeah.
no litter, no graffiti. It's a top destination.
Yeah. And funny thing with Funchal, I've been there so many times. The last time I went there was for my honeymoon. Um, what was that, 4 years ago? And I was really pleasantly surprised okay, infrastructurally it's changed and it's easier to get around the island and everything than what it was, what it was in 2001. But in terms of the feeling of the place, the restaurants, the little tashkas and diners, the poncha drinking, those old diners where you go in and you have your poncha and you eat your peanuts and all the shells are on the floor. It hasn't changed. It's kept its identity, which is something quite beautiful.
Oh, for sure. And for tourism, authenticity is one of the key differentiators. Otherwise, the high streets are all the same. If you can
Yeah.
keep your destination with that level of uniqueness, that's what people remember. Yeah, they've done it well. I do. I'd say I haven't been for a few years, but maybe we need to go back.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, you've also seen Portugal kind of weather many storms. There was the economic crisis of '06, '08. That was tough. That was really tough. But there was this resolve in the Portuguese mentality, like we're going to tighten our belts, we're going to get through this. You didn't see people rioting and complaining and causing mayhem in the streets. It was almost like this collective, we'll get through this together. But on a level of tourism in business, they did some really dynamic things, and it really showed the resolve and the Portuguese word that doesn't riscar, just making a way and making a plan. I mean, you must have seen that as well on a business level.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, we have had the ups and downs. That was they were tough times, and then we had with the IMF and what we could spend and what we could do. And you're right. I think the resilience, tourism will always be a great drive, but I think there's more than tourism. But I think it's that is easy to fall back on generally, and I think that was able to really kick off. And then of course we had the crisis of the properties 14, 15. That was another,
Yeah.
and I think that period between the IMF going out and then when we had the property crisis, I think maybe that's when there was too many projects. I was probably part of a lot of that development as well. And there's hotels opening everywhere, and there was massive speculation. I remember, I mean, I opened up part of the development of Beja, the project of Beja Airport, and what was happening
Mm.
there with Alkieva. And I remember talking to German tour operators, and they said, "Look, we don't go to Portugal for lakes. We go to Portugal for the beach. We have lakes in Switzerland and Germany." And you think, yeah, probably did it make sense to put thousands of rooms in man-made lakes? I think it was that Almansil Valdelobos Lago triangle. It's probably some of the highest real estate in Europe because it's
Hmm.
20 minutes from an airport. And it's easy. It's easy. I'm an Irish guy or a Brit. I jump on a plane. I'm in Faro. I'm in my Vivenda in 20 minutes in the middle of, Europe's best. And I think we kind of took that. That was successful, and that will never. But I think we kind of took that and thought you can do that all over the country, and you can't. It's
Yeah.
the Spanish will come in, or the Brazilians will come and start buying in the interior. It's different today. I think today it's a different world again. But there was that period, those 5 or 6 years where, and then of course we had to sell a lot, and that's when unfortunately the banks took ownership of a lot of Portugal was in the hands of banks for some years. We know that,
Yeah.
not just hotels, but many industries were suffering. And we've
Yeah.
been, okay. And then we fought back, and then COVID, and now I suppose, we're in. It's what next?
Yeah.
Because we're pushing our limits. I would say we're pushing our limits on what more we can develop. There's now it seems to be that expression less is more. The American market will pay. So if the Americans can come in, we can start pushing up restaurant bills, we can push up property prices, we can push up hotel stays. But we're not, the Americans are about 40% of the market. So there's another 60% that we're becoming expensive.
Yeah.
In when we compare, it's difficult to compare a cup of coffee in Paris or Lisbon, but that there are things today that, as you said, in our periods that we've seen, we should never be cheap, but we used to be really good value for money. Maybe
Yeah.
sometimes now we're becoming a bit expensive in some of
Mm.
and the
In-
delivery may not be as good as it could be for that
yeah.
kind of segment that you're looking for.
Yeah. I think I mean, like, you and I have been here for a long time, and I think there's a couple of different sides to it. One, I think Portugal did undersell itself for a long, long time. Probably was too cheap, like, but then you look at places, when we talk about places like the Algarve, that Golden Triangle, Cascais, Lisbon now, it's it's changed a lot and has become quite expensive. But I liked what you're talking about with that, that authentic tourism, and I still think it's a country where there's a lot of space where there's just really nice places where you can go. You might have to drive an hour from the airport, but you can have a real authentic Portuguese meal, be surrounded by good, friendly Portuguese people. And I think, yeah, it's about finding that balance and creating the space where people can explore a little bit further off the beaten track.
Oh, and I couldn't, second that more, Dylan. And that's probably what, for me, the nicest place of Portugal is the Alentejo. I mean, I found a place there 15 years ago, and it's it's incredible. And I've been to Tuscany, and you say, oh, we're the Tuscany of Portugal. No, we're not. We don't want to be the Tuscany of Portugal. I don't want to see Louis Vuitton shops in Everett. There's no reason to have Louis Vuitton in Everett.
Just be the Alentejo. Just be the Alentejo. Yeah.
And that kind of mindset that, yes, you are in the middle of a part of Portugal that is unique. And the people, the friendliness, the ability for people want to help and not feel that as a tourist you'll be ripped off. The genuinity is so important. And the same in the north. We have on my wife's side, we have a nice little property up in Minho, and again, the north of Portugal is beautiful.
Beautiful, yeah.
And that you mentioned, I was talking before we started. Yeah, I'm doing quite a bit of work in Saudi Arabia, and they talk about their diversity. You've got obviously fantastic beach, Red Sea on one side, Gulf Sea on the other. You've got the historical cities. We have that. I mean, and they're 40 million people, but it's a big landmass. You look at Portugal north-south, it's about 900 kilometers, and it's 200 kilometers wide, and you've got green in the north, beach in the south, nothing in the middle. So we've got more diversity. From a group's point of view, do a tour. Portugal, you can take them from the green to the beach to the interior within hours. The country's changing actually within hours of your trip. And that again is an area that we tried when I was heavily involved with Visit Portugal. We used to use that a lot. When I worked the Chinese market, I helped bring the first flight from Beijing to Lisbon. And that was one of our key selling points into the Chinese. Yes, I remember they said, do you have a Louis Vuitton shop? I said, we do have one. So that's really important. Do you need to take a ticket, senha, as we say in Portuguese, to get into Louis Vuitton shop? I said, I don't know. I don't go in it. I don't really buy Louis Vuitton, but I don't think so. I don't think we have a.
No.
They said, can you buy more than 2 bags? I said, again, don't know, but I presume you can. And the rationale was, look, when we go to Paris and Rome on these group tours, they're buying so much of these luxury goods that if you now tell the tour operators in China, your Louis Vuitton shop you can have unlimited bags. I said, look, but I'm not coming to sell Portugal because of a few shops. We're coming to show the Chinese the diversity of the destination. The fact that they can put their toe in the sea, then they can go to a winery, then they can go to the capital, then they can go and see the castle. So, that's what we're trying to sell, but it just highlighted how sometimes, the cities have become too similar in the world. But the finessing of a destination is much more about, just turn a corner. And I remember in BA, when I was in British Airways a long time before I came to Portugal, we ran an advertising campaign about undiscovered Europe. And there's, again, pre-internet and pre-AI, that people used to read guidebooks. Used to get a Lonely Planet of a city. And I remember we shooted pictures in Lisbon. This is 25 years ago, and we had pictures of Lisbon, and it was turn a corner and see what you'll discover. The mentality was, travel doesn't mean I have to go and see icons. And we used Portugal, and it didn't use Portugal, but actually what I then said following that for me is the great thing about Lisbon. We don't have a Big Ben, we don't have an Eiffel Tower, but we have the bairros, the neighborhoods, and just drop the map and just walk. Forget Pink Street or whatever it is, and just take in the city, because that's its best. Not having to do the ticks of, I've seen this, next one, next thing, next tick. Because then we're not going to be the same as the other European capitals.
Between my job as a realtor at Portugal Realty and hosting this podcast, life is pretty busy. But lately I've been receiving so many messages from people that want to know more about buying property here on Portugal's Silver Coast that I've got to do something about it. So starting now, for subscribers only, I'm offering up a 30-minute session per day. That's 5 30-minute sessions for a one-on-one meeting to talk about buying property here on Portugal's beautiful Silver Coast. This is for subscribers only. So please subscribe to book your session and get in touch with us through the links below via WhatsApp or email to book your session today. I'll be happy to speak to you. It's for subscribers only and it's completely free. I mean, I think it's interesting, and I've seen this develop now in Portugal, where you had, the Gulf and the Pastel Nata and some of the sites that were bringing people here. And I think more than ever before, people are looking beyond that with Portugal. And a lot of that's got to do with the internet and more people living here. And you're seeing, okay, you've got Lisbon, which has become pretty touristic, but you can still go down a side street and have the best fish dinner of your life for under 20 euros. And you can still find these little hidden gems. And then, like you said, if you veer off and you go an hour north or an hour south, it's a completely different place. I was, as you know, I'm in real estate, and I've seen the change in clients over the last 15 years who are not just looking for a holiday home. Now they're looking to move. They're looking to come and live here. And that for me is really, really interesting, where you see the kind of all those other good things about the country that won't be in a tourism brochure, the safety, the people, the healthiness of the food, the farmers markets, and these kind of things, which you won't maybe see in a tourism brochure. And I was actually speaking with a client the other day, and she said, because we're up here on the Silver Coast, so not far from Praia del Rey, but more on the kind of the north side of the lagoon, where you have the typical Portuguese towns and things, Nazaré and São Martinho de Porto. And she said, you come here, you feel like you're welcome, but you don't feel like they've changed. You don't feel like they've had to kind of mold themselves into a touristic destination. It's just like, you're welcome here, but this is who we are. And I think that's something quite interesting that you can still discover in Portugal. And it's super interesting to see, now we did this long ago, but now you're looking at more and more people from all over. You mentioned the US, but I mean, it's still the British people. The market is still there. The Germans, Polish, Dutch, Belgian, who are now looking at Portugal as not just a place to visit, but a place to live. And I'm just curious to see how that's developed.
Yeah, I think that it's a good point. There are two different things, I suppose. That having a second home was very much the drive in the 80s and the 90s, as you said. And I think the British market for sure was by far the largest. And I remember, when we negotiate routes, when we're talking to Ryanair and EasyJet, the numbers that we used to provide in terms of how many Brits and the Irish market also was very important. The benefit of a second home to an airline was the fact that you might fly 7 or 8 times a year. So that, we have what you could call, the shoulder periods, September, October, November, February, March, when you may not be full touristic season. The second home market would really help an airline continue. And that's where the Algarve was very successful. And I think a lot of people were buying what they knew. So if I take the same, a lot of Germans were not buying so much in Portugal. They were buying more in Mallorca. Scandinavians were buying in the Alicante region of Spain. So it was kind of ghetto, ghetto is the wrong word, but you know what I mean? It's kind of Brits were in the Algarve, Germans were in Mallorca, Scandinavians were in the kind of the Alicante coast, Benidorm. And that kind of model was because one bought, and that's how we were selling properties. And all of a sudden you say that hasn't kind of changed. I think what you've now got is second home market is a little bit different. People are buying to rent rather than just buying to stay. But yes, what you're talking about now is people deciding, it's a lifestyle change. And to uproot from one country to another, what benefit does that bring? And of course, I think what Portugal brings straight away, as you rightly said, is the fact that you've got two things. One is, English is, you don't need to speak Portuguese. That's not right to say that, but that's going to be one of the key differences. To a person that doesn't speak multiple languages, that's going to be a real importance, that I can have conversation. I don't feel isolated, and I'm not going to need translators all the time. So, and safety, as you rightly said, those are two that will make people want to try to bring a new life. I suppose then it's the things that come around it, the ability to do things easily. Yes, you've got, it's a small country, so you're not far from Lisbon Airport or Porto Airport or Faro Airport. So we've got connectivity in and out of that market space, which makes it easy for people who want to then go back to home countries, etc. But the systems are pretty good. We talk a lot about the bureaucracy of Portugal, but when you're in the system and you're registered, things work. Things we're a very digital country. Everything's digital, so you can get things. Things happen. It's easy once you're in. It happens. So I think, probably the other then is what about the health system, particularly for older people. And a lot of Brits left Spain and Portugal when they kind of realised that that if their health is not so good, that we don't have an NHS the same in Portugal as you would do in the UK that would look after you. And of course, what we've realised is the private sector's jumped in, and the ability to have private hospitals that are state of the art, linked to insurance companies, linked to apps. Doctors can share information. You've got a good opportunity there, and I saw that. We talked about medical tourism again, and there was a lot of money is being spent in recuperation tourism. So Hungary was for dentistry, South Africa was for cosmetic surgery, and their country and Portugal didn't really know what to do. What is our medical tourism? Is it just come and recover because of the weather, or actually it's not medical tourism? We have a very good hospital system that allows you to live here now and not worry about that. And I suppose that outside of Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve, would what next for a place like Évora or Coimbra? Again, how do they look at the hospital services?
And I think from a medical perspective, and just speaking from our own experience, I mean, I don't have private healthcare. I do, but I don't use. I very rarely use it. I've had pretty serious health issues, and always through the public sector. And I think again, it comes back to when you talk about the bureaucracy. I think once you're here, and once you kind of understand, okay, this is how this works, or this is who I need to speak to, it becomes very seamless and pretty robust. Even the public sector, which I think people are surprised about. And certainly for Americans, when they realize that they can be residents here, and that will give them access to a healthcare which is going to be next to nothing, or substantially lower than what they're paying in the US for simple things. But I think what I'd like to dig into a bit more, Gavin, is, I mean, you've got that like kind of bullet list. We've checked a couple of those bullet lists when people are looking at moving to another country, the weather, the safety. For a South African, for me, it was safety, the healthcare, the language. I think those four are enormous things when you're looking at it from a checklist. But you and I know, we've lived here for a long time. When you start to dig below the surface, there's other things that are just so wonderful and enjoyable about living here. Maybe you can just shed some light on some of the things that you enjoy, just as Gavin, the husband and the dad, and the man who enjoys his quinta and wants some peace and quiet sometimes. But what are the things that you enjoy living here day to day?
The inevitable, the weather generally. I mean, okay, this year, March, April weren't that good, and there were times I was going back to the UK. And
terrible March and April,
very wet. No, it was the worst. I think it's in the 20 odd years I've been here, it's the worst I've ever had. And
me too.
I know that because I hardly played any golf because the courses were nearly flooded most of the time. So yes,
not great for golf.
There's that mentality. I don't chase the sun. I know this. I go to the sun when I need to because it's always there. So that puts you open the door in the morning or open the window and the sun's there. That makes a big difference. And just it's a friendly society. It's not very okay. Some of the driving can be a bit aggressive at times, but other than
true story.
Other than driving, I think it's people are not out to hurt or harm. It just just seems to it flows. Yeah, I suppose maybe you just get used to it. But I travel a lot, and as you say, there's no better place to come back to than for me to rest in the Alentejo. I've been away a whole week in an international country, and just come and sit down and relax. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that busy. The roads. Okay, again, I've got the bridge to worry about in the
Yeah,
morning.
that's not fun. That's not fun getting
No,
across
but
the bridge. No,
but to go to the Alentejo, I see 3 or 4 cars on the highway. So,
that's right. Yeah.
you look.
There's the talk about extremes. You're crossing one of those bridges and then you get into that Alentejo and it's, yeah, one extreme to the
Yeah,
next.
it's. And I use the public transport as well. As the trains are pretty good. Subway is good. So yeah, I mean, it's easy. Things, as I said,
Yeah. It flows. Yeah,
normally
I like the term that you used, Portugal flows.
yeah,
It just works. And I think a lot of that is because of the people. You've dealt with many different people in 20 years, I would imagine, and across different sectors from a private capacity, but also business. And what do you want to tell people about the Portuguese?
I think they're very open and very honest. I think sometimes they're a bit. It's very easy. I, I learned it quite quickly when your national songs about death, um, fado, and this idea of or in Portuguese, more or less, mais ou menos. Hey, how you do today? Oh, more or less.
Mais ou menos. Tudo, yeah, está a andar.
A bit negative at times. I think that sometimes, yeah, you should be lucky where you are. In a nice way. You don't I think sometimes, we have an expression that the grass is greener on the other side. Well, I'm a Brit that came to live in your country, so and I'm not running back to the UK for love of money. No, so um, I think yeah, sometimes they can be a little bit under assuming. Sometimes a bit negative. Say not in a negative way, but it feels, oh, it's not going to happen, so let's not. Maybe sometimes not always wanting to take the risk as maybe in other countries, but generally no. It's a great hospitable country. People are not out to rip you off; they're out to help the best they can. And
Mm,
sometimes you speaking a little bit of English, you shouldn't, but it helps because then they try and help you even more. So
yeah,
particularly with
yeah,
some of the
yeah,
finance offices, don't tell people that, but yes, sometimes yeah, and I suppose that there's that mindset that as a culture, and I'm married into it, I presume it's in the UK we don't do titles. I mean, I I'll be careful what I say, but I remember there was a minister that signed himself as an engineer. And I said, look, sorry, an engineer in my country is the guy that comes and fixes the telephone. Don't call yourself an engineer. You're a Mister or a Mrs. I'm a professor, doctor. No, I'm not a doctor. I have no knowledge of medical history. Oh, you have a degree, so you're a doctor. Please. I think that
yeah.
annoys me. It annoys me that there's this kind of, in one way, they're so hierarchical. And maybe that's the language as well, the você and the tu. And sometimes you feel, don't do the titles. You
Yeah,
don't need titles to prove who you are. And I think there's
yeah,
there's a little bit too much of the overplaying of the titles, and then this kind of um. But generally, yeah, they get their hands dirty and they get on with it the best they
yeah,
can.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it's like in all cultures, we've got the good and the bad in us. But I think, yeah, sometimes don't. And they like to write. Again, I think that's the language. In English, we're straight to the point. Sometimes it takes a
mm,
long. I have to go around a lot of umph to get to. So, what do you want? What's
yeah,
what's the meaning in the business world? Yes, there's a lot of. But again, that's
yeah,
just the way the language is.
yeah.
Something that could be 10 pages in Portuguese becomes 1 page in English.
Yeah, I think it's curious. I mean, you're married to a Portuguese. I also married. I married a Portuguese. I'm married to a Portuguese woman, and we get a little bit more into the Portuguese culture and mindset, which is super interesting. The importance of food was the thing that I had to get used to a lot. You don't just go to a destination to visit a castle. Where do you have lunch? Where we're going to have lunch. That was something that I had to get used to. and now I just embrace it and love it. But I wonder, I found especially in your sort of traditional areas, like where I live and you've got your house in the Alentejo, I'm talking about your places outside of Lisbon and Algarve. I always sometimes always feel like there's a bit of an imposter syndrome in the mentality of the Portuguese, like they don't know how good they've got it. And they feel like they have to either big themselves up a bit, which is maybe where the titles and the kind of the language comes in, or they feel like they have to hide it. And I'm like, because I always find there was a curiosity from people. Like, why are you here? South Africa's a beautiful country. Why are you living in Portugal? And I'm like, you guys have no idea how good you have it here. Just the safety and the way that people care for each other and the community. These are not things that you find everywhere in the world. And I wonder if there is sometimes that imposter syndrome that we don't want to show the authenticity. We don't want to show that authentic side. I feel like now there's a bit more pride in our in the festas and the Santos Populares, and now it's like becoming more because people are discovering it more. But I always felt like sometimes there was just that strange discretion that they had where they didn't want to big themselves up too much, or they wanted to hide that those authentic things, which in the end are the things that are so beautiful and so wonderful and are the reason that I've never left.
No, you're absolutely right, Dylan. I think, again, if I was in charge, I suppose I'd be. I think history needs to. What's the history most people think about is 1975. No, forget
Mm-hmm.
talking about and celebrating. You've got a big history, and the colonization. Again, maybe now if you look at what the UK has had with some of its colonies, the mentality, you shouldn't be shouting all of that and slaves, and it's hard to say. But Portugal was a pioneer in the world. And I didn't study here, so just how much do they get? How much is that really instilled in children's learnings about the good of Brazil, the good of the colonies in Africa, Goa, India. I mean, you say to people, oh, Portugal had the Brits allowed Portugal to keep Goa. Why? Because the great that Portugal had done for the region of Goa, and that so when they kind of the Brits kind of took over India, they didn't push the Portuguese out. The opposite. They were allies from the Treaty of
Mm-hmm.
Windsor. And I think, maybe I come from a culture where we're very proud of our history. Some might say too much in the case, but I think, I'd love to see Portugal. And maybe it's because of, is there the fact that the monarchy isn't involved, and there's kind of a joke against the monarchy and what it would be. And I don't know if, you look at Spain and how some look up to the monarchy, some don't, whether or not, being a republic, has that kind of changed the vision of how we position the history of our country. But
Yeah.
I think you're right. I feel they don't sell enough that we conquered, we helped to conquer the world, good or bad, learn from it. And, the way they were able to then, for former colonies, provide passports much greater than the UK did to its former colonies. So they're very keen to flourish and allow the other markets to come in. But I think, history probably, they feel a bit, you feel don't want to be proud of what we did. But then you get them that go out, no better than Mourinho. It's good how well he represented Portugal in the international market. But he was so successful. I'm
Yeah.
proud of the success and be arrogant
Yeah.
of the success.
Yeah. Yeah. Ronaldo
Ronaldo's
as
different. Yeah,
well.
Ronaldo. I think Ronaldo's just he's a statesperson these days, isn't he? He's a complete gentleman wherever he goes, and he's an ambassador for for for, for Portugal to an extent in that way that he he adapts to the culture of the country he's
Yeah.
in, and does what he
Yeah.
can. And you look and um, some of the best. When I spend a lot of time, fortunately, I've had to spend a lot of time in the UK in hospitals because of family. A lot of the good nurses, most of the good nurses in the UK are Portuguese.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm assuming you speak the language pretty well.
Ah, I wouldn't ever say I'm fluent. No. Unfortunately, I think I've kind of slipped into the international that I've been here. fully understand, but I would never say I'm fluent. No, I can get by, but I do drop into English a lot. Obviously, if the family life is a bit different because it's a joint house, so we speak
Yes, yes.
different languages. But yes, I mean, and I suppose that's one of the negatives for foreigners coming into Portugal is that we can become lazy and not be fluent in Portuguese because the locals will always speak it, and they see a blonde guy, they'll all of a sudden want to speak to him in English. That
Yeah,
I go to Spain or Italy, it's not going to happen. So I think
yeah,
that's why I say that's got to be important in the story you said earlier about living, because we're at an era when it's changing all the time, but people over 50 in Portugal probably learn French as
yeah.
a second language at school, and anybody below 50 learn English. So the elders are dying. The French speaking Portuguese as second language is dying off, unfortunately, and the youth is only learning in English,
English, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and even some,
Yeah,
putting English into Portuguese expressions. So it's yes, they are.
yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I battled at the beginning to learn because of people wanting to help me and they would speak English. And
Yes, you got to
there's
be.
two things I think with the Portuguese. One is the capacity, their capacity to speak other languages is phenomenal. But also the willingness, when you compare that to kind of Spain and France, there's a willingness from the Portuguese to speak. But I do find that, and you would have experienced this, that I know you say you're not fluent, but you understand and you can speak and you can hold a conversation. You experience this country on a more profound and deeper level when you can speak a little bit, and
Yes, of
you
course,
see the
because
appreciation, which is
exactly,
lovely.
exactly, and also the way that they interact with each other as well, because to a lot of it can be seen as there's a lot of uh, hands going, raised voices. To
Yeah,
our culture, you might think they're fighting, they're arguing,
yeah,
but it isn't.
yeah,
You say, yeah, it's just like that.
yeah.
You say,
Well,
but
I had this with clients many years back from Hong Kong. And actually, funny when you talked about the Louis Vuitton story, that reminded me of my client from Hong Kong, because that's all she was worried about was where can I go to get my Gucci and all of these things. And I wanted to just show them a different part of Lisbon. But I remember we were in an elevator coming down from a lawyer's office, and there were these two ladies in the office in the elevator, and they were talking very animatedly, let's say. And my two clients from Hong Kong, they were like, and the lady stepped out of the elevator and off they went and carried on yelling at each other. And they said, were they fighting? And I said, no, actually, they were just talking about lunch. It's just,
no, it's true.
I said,
It's the
food is
expressive
very,
language.
very serious. Food is
Yeah,
very
yeah, no,
serious,
it's true.
But
But the
yes, it's
expression of
interesting.
language, yes, yeah, no, it's very interesting. True.
Gavin, what's one thing that you would like people to remember and to take away from our conversation?
Oh no, I suppose it's a in a nice way. I've lived here for 20 years. I mean, I never I should giving too much secrets away. I presume I never became a citizen. I was always, I never, because of Brexit, I didn't, and I was forced to take residency. Now I will take citizenship. So I suppose I've lived here 20 odd years. I've paid taxes for 20 odd years. So I'm Portuguese by living and by
By
work. And
adoption.
yeah, and I think I've given, I've helped. I've had a lot of I've worked in most of the big schools on the MBA program. So a lot of people know me. Not I helped. I think I've helped Portugal, and that's always a good thing. They've helped me. I have a fantastic family and a great house, and everything is good. But I think I've also helped, and that's what's nice. I've contributed to their society um, in the way that, particularly on the tourism side, people. If you say, "Okay, here's the guy that brings the suitcases to give support to the tour operators and airlines," and it's so yeah. I feel that I've given. I've not just taken. Other than paying taxes, I've given back. But I suppose it's my silliness that I didn't take citizenship because I don't vote. And then again, maybe I should be voting,
Hmm.
particularly at the moment. I think it's crucial that So yeah, that's just my own issues. I've just got to get my paperwork together. Um,
Okay,
and take
good.
the yes and have I remember the Brits because I asked a few years ago, and the Brits said, "Oh yes, you're allowed to take Portuguese citizenship, but we have to inform you that just in case you did something wrong in another country, you can't call on our consular services anymore. You can only call on your new home." I said, "Why is that? The Brit consuls across the world are better than the Portuguese? I don't see that many good things about our consuls when people get stranded. So don't be so arrogant about me wanting to become a citizen of another country, because I know some countries aren't. We know as Brits we are allowed to be dual citizens
Yeah.
in that way. So yes, it's just
Yeah.
paperwork on my side now."
Yeah. Gavin, how can people follow you
Well, no,
and
I'm
get in
not
touch?
really. I'm on LinkedIn as Gavin Eccles. No, as I said, I don't need to shout people know. People find me in the same way in work. I have a good record in my work, so people know what I'm doing. So I'm more on LinkedIn than I am on other social. But
Okay.
yeah, that's where I am. Yes.
We'll pop a link in the show note if people want to get in touch
Yeah,
and
please.
chat.
You want to know?
We'll pop a LinkedIn link. Gavin, a question that we ask all of our guests: Portugal, the simple life. Why?
In everything I've said, it's just normally great weather, food and wine is great. I can play some golf. I don't feel stressed. It's easy to get around. Maybe I've helped with connections. I can get in and get to a lot of countries quickly. So yeah, I can. But as I said, uh, there's nothing better than a Friday night. I have in Quintina in Alentejo, sitting under the Alpendra with a red wine, looking at the stars.
Beautiful.
Uh, you can take whatever you want in London and New York. It doesn't interest me. That's the simple life for me. Yes,
Beautiful. Yeah.
sitting in that warmth of the Alentejo in the summer when the sun's gone down, and even in the winter when it's the other way with the fireplace on. Um,
Yeah.
that's simple. Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. That's a wrap.
So thank you once again to our guest, and thank you to all of you for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and please leave a comment or a review. We always love to hear from you. Don't forget, Portugal The Simple Life also has a magazine, so download it. It's for free. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and as we say in Portugal, sejas bem-vindo. Welcome to The Simple Life.